The long, hot days of summer have finally arrived, and with it the bounty of the garden that is finally starting to come in. For some, this produce may be coming from their own garden, and then some of that produce may be coming in from local farmers markets or farm stands. Either way, the produce abounds and it needs to be preserved. This marks the start of the busiest time of year for me as I try to put by as much food as I can for my family for the winter. I am normally a stout believer at getting my other produce at farmers markets and farm stands local to me and eschewing the grocery store. However, every now and again, there is an amazing sale at the grocery store that far outstrips anything that we could find anywhere else. Unfortunately, the farm stands in our area are currently selling corn at $1 a cob, or $12 for 12 cobs. And this has been something I have been waiting on. I haven't really wanted to spend that price on that corn. And then I noticed the sale at our local store selling fresh Ontario corn for 12 cobs for $1.88. So that was a massive savings for me. Instead of spending $12 for 12 cob, I spent $1.88 per cob. So I went over there very first thing in the morning. I was there for them opening the doors, and I went in and I got 7 dozen of corn. And there was a lot there, so I didn't feel like I was overdoing it. However, when I went back later that day for other things, I noticed that they had put on a restriction, so a limit, so they only limited people for 12. But then they kept getting corn, so I kind of thought that limit was a little absurd, but it is what it is. I lucked out and was able to get in there and get that corn for a really good price. So I spent the day this day preserving that corn. We buy a lot of canned corn. I do a lot of Mexican meals, and we love canned corn in our meals. So I love to be able to do my own canned corn. The amount that I do here will not be enough to last us the year. However, it is a start. I start off by taking the corn off the cob. I just use a knife. I know there's a bunch of tools you can use, but the knife works well for me. I'm going to go ahead and freeze all of my cobs for later use. I'm more than likely going to can up a broth for corn chowder. I know there's some other ways that you can use corn cobs. I would love to hear how you reuse your corn cobs. Do you do jelly? Do you do broth? Please let me know in the comments. I love getting the ideas from you guys. Now I go ahead and I get my pint jars. I'm just adding half a teaspoon to each jar. Salt is not necessary in the canning process. It's just there for flavor, and I have a really nice mineral salt that I'm using, so I like to add the salt to my corn. I then fill up raw pack with my corn until there is 1 inch of headspace. And I do this with all of my jars. I can fit 9 pints in my pressure canner, so that's what I'm working with right now, and I know I'll be doing a few batches of this. This corn was absolutely delicious. We did have a few cobs left and we had them fresh, and my husband said it was the best corn that he had ever had, which is pretty good for corn going for $1.88. So after I have raw packed my corn into my jars, I go ahead and add boiling water into these jars up to 1 inch headspace. I use the back end of a spatula actually because it is wooden, just to debubble my jars. So you want to get those bubbles out so it does not affect your headspace and therefore affect the sealing of your jars. I like to wipe my lids off just to make sure there's no residue or cracks or anything there. Then I pressure can them at 10 pounds of pressure for 55 minutes. So now instead of spending $3 for a can of corn, I now have my own jarred can of corn for 30 cents, which is quite the savings. We have peaches that have started coming in from our peach tree. I have been picking them a little bit early because they do ripen off the vine. However, I am picking them early because we are in the fight with the squirrels. They love to strip my trees of all their fruit. So I've already lost my plums this year. I am making sure they do not get my peaches. On top of this, I have also headed out to our local farmer's market and picked up a great big bag of fresh peaches. I will not be preserving these today. However, later on in the week, I will be preserving these, so make sure you check out that video when it comes out. Fresh green beans are our favorite summer vegetable. They just bring us so much joy, and I love preserving these for the winter. I never seem to be able to preserve enough. For our family, we do not enjoy the taste of canned vegetables. It's just not something that our palate enjoys. So whenever I am preserving vegetables, I like to freeze them. So I am taking this large bag of beans and I am going to blanch them and freeze them. We do have a large amount of beans coming in from our own garden right now, but that is serving us for a lot of our fresh eating purposes. So I haven't had enough to steam and freeze yet. So that's why I am starting off with these beans, and I'm doing this today, and more likely next week I will be going back to get some more. We do not like store-bought frozen beans, nor do we enjoy beans that are fresh in the store in the winter. So this is the only time that I have to preserve these beans for our use in the winter, just because they will hold their flavor in the frozen form much better than the ones that are bought in the store. I start off by taking the stem head off as well as the tail end, just because we do prefer it that way. And then I'm getting them in bowls ready to rinse off before I take them to be steamed. I am so blessed that my daughter loves to help me in the kitchen. Whenever there's a project going, she loves to get in there and help. Now, I make sure that I am keeping all of my stem heads and my tails of my beans. I have bags that I keep in the freezer that are normally vegetable scraps, and I keep them for using in my broth making. So never get rid of those kale stems or any sort of offshoot from a vegetable. Make sure you're keeping them for your broth. So after we've gotten all of these beans stemmed and tailed, I am making sure to give them a good rinse. They were at a farmer's market, so not sure exactly who's touched them or what they've done with their hands before, so they're getting a good wash. Now, the last few days have been incredibly warm out. It was 34 degrees out this day. This is Celsius. And so I got my propane burner out and decided to blanch these outside just to keep the heat outside instead of inside. So once I've got my water boiling here, I'm just going to go ahead and stick my beans in this water. After that, I wait for them to hit a rolling boil, and then once I got a rolling boil, I set my timer for 2 minutes, and then I take them out and put them in some ice water. The ice water will just stop the beans from cooking any longer so that they don't end up overcooked and slimy once you go to reheat them. Most vegetables need to be blanched before you freeze them, otherwise they turn black and slimy once they've been in the freezer for a while. So this way it does something to the starches to make them freezer safe, but normally every vegetable needs to be blanched before being put into the freezer. And this little girl who's still waiting for a new home is making sure that she's keeping me company out here. And there's her mama. So I am just making sure that I've got this towel out. I was hoping to have a table to put these on, but today I'm just going to put them on the ground. My little mini schnauzer here is pretty sure she's going to get a treat from these beans. However, I'm just putting them out on this towel to dry. I don't want wet beans going into freezer bags. So this just helps to soak up all of the moisture off these beans before I get them into those freezer bags. Once I've gotten all of the beans blanched and dried outside, I bring them inside and get them into some Ziploc bags to put into the freezer. Now, you could flash freeze these on some baking pans with some parchment paper and then put them in the bag. However, I am doing one bag for one meal for the 4 of us, so I'm not worrying about flash freezing these because I'm not going to be taking some out of the bag and leaving some. I'm just going to be defrosting one bag at a time. So if you are wanting to put a bulk amount of beans in a bag and separate them as you go, then I would highly suggest flash freezing them and then putting them separately into a bag. This amount of beans gave us 5 bags, so 5 servings for my family for the winter. Once again, my daughter is the biggest help and she is in there helping me out with these peppers. So when we were at the farmer's market, I also picked up a bulk bag of peppers. We also preserve a lot of peppers for winter use. So what I do with these peppers is I chop them up into bite-sized pieces, and then these are able to go directly into a bag to freeze. So I do not need to blanch these. I can just throw them in a bag and freeze. And they actually don't even need to be flash frozen either, so they can be put into a bag. They don't freeze up into a clump or anything like that. Because of their shape, they are very malleable and will come apart easily. I love having peppers in my freezer to go to add to soups, stews, stir fries, tacos, anything like that. So we actually go through a lot of peppers like these, and I love this because it is so easy to preserve these. Just cut and freeze. So I make sure that I do a lot of these in the year. I was also able to explain to my daughter why it's so important to shop around, hit up the farmer's market, and buy in bulk. The other day, she was doing a homeschool project, and her project was to come up with a meal that she wanted to cook. She had a budget, and she had to come up with those ingredients, go shopping for those ingredients, and stay under budget. And then she had to make the meal. And she decided on a beef pasta. And for that recipe, she needed a pepper. So we went to the store and she got a pepper and found out this one pepper was over $2 just for one pepper. So that was a little astounding for her and myself that this pepper was so expensive. So after we went to the farmer's market, I told her to figure out how much each of those peppers cost, as we spent $15 for a bulk bag and there was 20 peppers in there. And she found out that each pepper was 75 cents. So 75 cents is at a market pepper, a bulk pepper, as opposed to $2 for a singular pepper from the store. So shopping around, going to those farmers markets and finding those deals is exactly what you have to do to save money. That being said, the farmer's market was not the one that had deals for these blueberries. These are fresh Canadian blueberries and they were on an amazing price, just over $1 at our local store, where this would normally be $4 for those little containers. It was just over $1, so I made sure to stock up on these so that we could freeze them and have them for winter use as well. Freezing blueberries is also very easy to do. I do like to flash freeze my blueberries. I just find it a lot easier to pour from the bag that way. I know it's not 100% necessary, as blueberries are kind of like peppers where they're so big and bulky that they break away easily on their own. But I did have the space, so today I figured I would flash freeze them. So I took my baking sheet, and then I've got these silicone mats that I got. I had run out of parchment paper and I didn't want to have to rely on parchment paper all the time. So I just got these silicone baking sheets and I am using that today. I'm just going to fill up these baking pans and toss them into my freezer. These blueberries were also incredibly delicious. I don't think I have had better blueberries before. My kids annihilated a bunch of these blueberries. They were just so good, so tasty, and I couldn't believe how good they were. I do personally have blueberry bushes as well. However, despite the fact that I had a lot of blueberries started on them, the birds have eaten them all. We got 2 singular blueberries from them, so we are relying on store-bought this year. But these blueberries were very, very good. So this is after they were flash frozen. You can see that they break apart really super easily, but now they will be in my bag and basically in singular use, so they will be really easy to pour out for smoothies and such. If you are interested in more preserving, in homemaking, in frugal living, make sure you check out my channel. I have a lot of ideas there. I will also be taking part in the 3 Rivers Every Bit Counts challenge this August. I preserve all year round anyways, so I figured I may as well take part in this. So this will be my first installment for that challenge. Again, if you're looking for any more frugal tips and ideas, make sure you check out this playlist that I have linked here. I have a lot of ideas for you. In the end, I had 27 pints of corn preserved, 3 bags of these blueberries, 5 bags of beans, and 3 bags of peppers, all preserved for my family for the winter. Thanks so much for joining me here today, guys, and I'll see you next time.